What is up, Maniacs? I am Zach, and I am the Milly Maker Maniac. Welcome to our Thanksgiving Day Slate breakdown. We're going to go through the game by game and then jump into my player rankings for the slate. Should be a really fun Thanksgiving. We have 3 games all hovering around 50 points or greater for the game total. All of the games have massive playoff implications, so it should be a fun week or a fun Thursday, fun Thanksgiving. Let's start with the Detroit Lions. Actually, they have a disadvantage in the pass game. Looks like it should be a little bit tougher matchup than normal for Jared Goff and crew. That doesn't mean that they can't overcome it, but it's definitely not one that it's like obvious to target by any means. They should, if the median outcome occurred, they should have below average days, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the case, especially in a division game where this has so much impact on not only the NFC North, but the whole NFC playoff picture. So in games like that, it can hit extremes. It could be one of those real big time defensive battles where neither offense can get anything going, and it's a real slog of a game. It comes down to whoever just wins the fourth quarter. Or it can be one of those games where the offensive coordinators open up the complete bag and get everything going, and both offenses are moving. Like, you definitely see a shootout in this type of environment. So there's just a large range of outcomes for this game environment. So when we're playing it, we're going to want to try to play primarily I'm going to try to game stack it or kind of fade this game, actually. So it's either going to be all or nothing for me for the most part. Like, I'll have a piece or two, but over this slate, for the most part, I'm going to try to bet on one game and being solid, and then I'm going to mix in Chiefs and Ravens. I feel like they have the two best overall matchups, so they're going to be where the majority of my one-off players are at. But anyways, back to the Lions. Kind of a tough matchup for Goff, but like I said, we'll still play some Goff lineups. There's definitely potential for that offense in this situation to go off. Looks like a slight advantage for Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in the run game. We'll definitely be interested in Jahmyr Gibbs. And then their defense actually has a pretty solid advantage against this Packers offense. Negative for both the running backs and the passing game for Green Bay. Looks like a disadvantage across the board. Thing about Green Bay, though, is their passing offense has a lot more potential than what they've shown. What LaFleur has done so far this year is basically, if they are able to win the game by just not turning the ball over, then he's just going to run the ball and punt the ball. He's not interested in putting up points because he believes in this defense so much, or he's not interested in chasing big points. He just wants to avoid the big mistake. We really haven't seen anything from this passing game from a fantasy football standpoint yet, but if they get pushed, which can definitely happen, that's when we've seen ceiling games from Jordan Love. Let's jump over to DraftKings here, and we can actually look at that on his game log. So low scores, big score. The opponent put up 25 points, so he got pushed there. Then the only other one, the opponent put up 40 points, and that was against Dallas. His other decent performance at 20, the opponent put up 18. That was earlier in the year against Washington too, where at that time we thought Washington were going to be a competitive team. All that being said, Love can do it. He just hasn't had to do it much because their defense has shut down a lot of teams. This strategy has blown up in their face twice against Cleveland and Carolina. They definitely should have dominated those games, but they let the team stay in it. All that being said, I think that there can be a case made for Jordan Love. If he does go off, like if he does have a 25-point game, the nice thing is his pass catchers are super cheap, and so then that gives us flexibility across the rest of the slate. Watson and Romeo Doubs are the two guys that I would want to target here. Watson is the more interesting to me. I think he's the more likely to 4x his price. Doubs has only had basically one boom game. That was in the Dallas game. Everything else has been hovering around that 10 to 15 mark week in and week out, which could be fine in a tournament. I don't mind him, but I'd like to have a little bit more upside. Watson, I think, gives you 25-point upside, so I want to pursue that. Right now, it's looking like Golden and both Williams are going to be out. If that's the case and Wicks plays, I would have interest in playing Wicks. If one out of these three guys doesn't play, and it also looks like Reed's not going to play, whoever is remaining, though, is I would have some interest in as being that kind of like contrarian dart throw to mix into some of the lineups for sure. And then at tight end, I actually have no interest in Musgrave. Fitzpatrick outsnapped him 3-1 last week and was on the field for more pass plays. Only had one target, but I think he's going to start to see some more targets based on his snap share. So if I was going to take any tight end here, it would be Fitzpatrick over Musgrave. On the Detroit side, Goff priced at 5,800. Really, there's not a big difference between all six quarterbacks, so pricing at QB doesn't really matter. It's just a matter of differentiating our lineups. So we got Goff, Gibbs at 8,800, so we need him to come in around 35 to 4x his salary, which he obviously can do. We got 1, 2, 3 scenarios that he's already done it this year. Big game. To me, I think the biggest weakness on Green Bay's defense is their interior defensive line, which happens to be the weakness for the Lions' offensive line. So it's kind of weakness on weakness there. I think if whoever wins that battle could really have a big impact on the outcome of the game. But if Detroit wins it, that sets up well for Gibbs and even for Montgomery for that matter. But I would be more interested in Gibbs. I think he could definitely put up a 32 point. If I was to bet on any player to score the most points on this slate, I would say it's Gibbs. It's just his pricing makes it a little bit harder to get to. So I'm going to have plenty of Gibbs. He'll be very popular, which is fine. But if he puts up a 35 spot, or honestly on this slate, even if he puts up like a 30 spot, you probably have to have that. And I think it's pretty likely that they lean on him in this a big game. Like they need this game. They're going to want to make sure that Gibbs gets 20, 25 touches. And when he touches the ball 20, 25 times, good things happen. So I'll be all over that for sure. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams is who we're looking at here. If anyone were to have the big game, the matchup sets up better for St. Brown than it does for Williams. But J-Mo can make it happen on any play, and at his price, like he can easily score 20. So that getting that 4x for Williams is very achievable. I like St. Brown too. My two favorites off of the Lions this week are definitely Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Obviously, they're expensive, but I think those would be the ones that I would have as just one-offs in other lineups. J-Mo, I would primarily tie to Goff. I think if Jameson Williams has a big game, that it probably brings Goff along with him. And there's just this slate, when we take this off and we look at that price range, I think this slate is in many ways going to come down to, did you pick the right receiver in this range? You see we have nobody in the 5K range. We go from Flowers at 6,100 down to Jameson Williams at 4,800. But between him, Watson, Dobbs, Worthy, and I guess you could even throw Yoshivas in there. If any of those guys have, a 25-point game, they kind of are like the skeleton key to the slate. And if two of them do, then you definitely, having a combination of two of these guys could get you unique to the field and hit. I think there's potential for all of those guys to hit 25, maybe minus Yoshivas, but Worthy, Dobbs, Watson, and Williams can definitely all hit 25. So getting that range correct is important. I don't have a huge stand on it. If I were to say who's the most likely in this group to hit 25 points, I would actually say it's Watson, just because the QB2 Arnold for Detroit has graded the worst, and that's who Watson is likely to be matched up with the majority of the time. And he seems to be Love's go-to guy, and I think they're going to have to pass the ball a little bit more than they do in normal games. So I would lean Watson in that group, but I'm really going to spread it out pretty evenly across my lineups with one, and in multiple lineups, we'll have two of these guys together for sure. All right, let's move on or we can jump. Actually, we need to talk about tight end quickly. And part of, I guess, Thanksgiving day slate is getting to guys that are like going to be unknown, that have a potential to score a touchdown. It looks like Raymond's going to be out and Tesla is going to play. So if he does play, Tesla could be one that we could mix in to just get contrarian, the guy that could get a big play. A tight end, Brock Wright, I actually think he's a pretty good value at 2,800. See, we did not participate in Tuesday. Ooh, unlikely to play. Oh, they're talking about Lapardo there. Sorry. we'll keep an eye on that. Dwelly, I guess, would become somewhat of an interesting play, but I think that actually would be more. If Wright doesn't play, to me, that leans more just a little bit better for Jameson Williams. But Dwelly could be a name that we can mix in if Wright's out. All right, let's jump over to the next game, Kansas City and Dallas. This one is two strengths on strengths. So you have Dallas's offense as a strength versus the strength of Kansas City, or having a good defense. So it actually grades that it's a bad matchup for Dallas across the board, but we know with Dallas's skill players and Dak Prescott that they are capable of scoring 28 points in any matchup, scoring 21 in the last three quarters last week against one of the best teams in the league and putting up some big fantasy scores against the Eagles there. So we can definitely see Dallas scoring points, even though that they have the disadvantage here. This is basically a playoff game for both teams. Dallas coming off a big win against Philadelphia, and KC trying to keep the dynasty going. They need to win this game really to maintain their playoff hopes. So anything goes in this game as well. But matchup-wise, it doesn't look good for the Cowboys. But again, that's not going to deter me from building stacks with Dak and George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. It's actually a massive advantage, though, where we have a strength versus a weakness on the Kansas City versus Dallas, although Dallas has played better D the last two games. But it's been against two flailing offenses in the Raiders and the Eagles, so we have to take that into account for sure. All that being said, I'm not scared of Dallas's defense by any means, and it should be a really good day for Patrick Mahomes and this offense. Big advantage of the run game. Looks like Pacheco's going to be back, so it makes it harder to figure out from fantasy purposes. But we can mix in both Hunt and Pacheco a little bit too, I think. I would lean more Hunt, though. So let's look at Kansas City first. So this offense, I really like. Mahomes probably will be my most owned quarterback, highest owned. Hunt, I would definitely mix in decent amount. He can still get to 20. He's going to get the goal line work, the short yardage work. Pacheco's would have to bust a big run or catch a pass to score. I think it's more likely he scores 4 points, gets 40 yards of total offense on 10 touches, something along those lines, where Hunt probably gets 15 touches and maybe even 10. Maybe it's 10 and 10 or 12 and 8 or something like that. If there's going to be 20 touches for the running back, somewhere in that ballpark. But Hunt, if there were any goal line carries, he would be the one getting them. So I would rather chase that touchdown upside with Hunt. But Pacheco is a very contrarian play if you want to go for that. A guy that touches the ball probably around 8 to 10 times this game. There's always a chance that he could break one and score a long touchdown, and then he becomes a slate breaker if that were the case. So he's somebody that we can mix in because there's still potential for that. And in a 3-game slate, we got to find some of these sneakier places to go after, some players that have the potential to at least score, 3x to 4x their salary, but it's very unlikely and people aren't going to touch it. So that Pacheco's a spot that we want to consider because of that. Rashee Rice is just a smash spot. He's going to be my favorite pay-up receiver for sure. Worthy hasn't done anything this year, but we know he has the potential to do so, and this is a great matchup for him to have a big game. He's had matchups like this previously this year and hasn't done anything with them, though, but he's very capable of doing that. So, again, that range of receivers, I'm just going to be pretty even in that 4,500 range on spreading out those guys, because I do think one of those guys is likely to have a big game, maybe even two of those guys. It's just a matter of getting it right. So I'll be in that range a lot. Just hope that we have the right combination when we have the correct guy in there. Hollywood Brown is somebody that we want to mix in, especially on some of the home stacks, just because, he is capable of scoring a touchdown, probably get around 4 catches, somewhere in that ballpark. So, yeah, we want to at least mix him in. Tyquan Thornton is also a real sneaky one. Really hasn't got any targets since Rice has been back, so it's hard to believe in that one. Juju, same thing. Hasn't really done anything. So, I mean, those could be like, we could build like one lineup each with maybe these guys just to really get contrarian. But I would, if you're playing 3 or 4 lineups, I definitely wouldn't play those guys. Travis Kelce, a really good spot here. Could definitely see him getting to 20 points, 4xing his salary. No Gray, I'm not sure if he's going to play or not. Okay, he's out. So, yeah, so it's just Kelce there. Been doing pretty solid. Yeah, I could definitely see him getting to 20, 25 even. All right, let's look at the Dallas side. Dak, I think he'll probably be somewhat low owned compared to everybody else, but I think it's going to be pretty spaced out, but he'll probably be towards the lower end. But I'm definitely going to build, basically I'm just going to go the same amount of lineups with every guy, but Dak would be towards the lower end of where I would rank guys. Javonte, we have to build with him just because of the volume and the touchdown equity, but I don't think huge upside is likely, but we definitely still need to build some lineups with him just because of the volume in this 6-game slate. We can't avoid that. Pickens and Lamb, I think price pretty fairly for this matchup. I would lean Lamb, actually. It just kind of feels like he's due in some ways, especially coming off the drops and in a big spot. You'd expect him to do well in a primetime game. Pickens has balled out all year long. I'm going to do some double stacks with Pickens and Lamb with Dak for sure. And then I'll mix in both these guys across my player pool, but I would lean more Lamb in my one-offs and Pickens more with Dak. Ferguson, I like Kelce a lot better, but, it's possible for him to score. I like the cheaper tight end, so he'll probably be one of my lower end tight ends. But when we're building like game stacks of this game where the Cowboys score 28 points or so, Ferguson's definitely a guy that has touchdown equity, so we can't ignore him by any means. It's just, if I was saying which tight end in this lineup or of this pool is the most likely to be tight end 1, I would actually put him at probably 3, maybe 4, but Kelce would be number 1. And then there's a big, I think it's pretty similar for Andrews, or even likely out of that same game to outscore him. If Brock Wright plays, I thought he could outscore him. That being said, like, there's no big names here, but the pricing difference makes it hard. So I'd probably have Ferguson like tight end 3 or so, I guess, the more we talk it out. All right, let's move to the last game. We got Cincinnati and Baltimore. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's go back over here. All right, we got Baltimore, massive advantage across the board. That we know they're playing the best defense for fantasy points this season, Cincinnati Bengals. We got both of them, the two big defenses we want to attack on the slate with the Cowboys and the Bengals. So, yeah, that's why I want to be locked in on a lot of Chiefs and a lot of Ravens this week. But across the board, solid advantage for the Ravens, despite them not having the best pass offense so far this year. Looks like a great spot for Lamar to have a big game. And also looks like a vintage Derrick Henry spot as well. So we would expect one or the other to happen, or maybe even both, for Baltimore to score 28 or so points. The question is, can Joe Burrow come in and lead this offense to push back? The game total on this is 52.5, but Baltimore is almost a 7-point favorite, or is a 7-point favorite. I think Joe Burrow can definitely have success. T. Higgins is out, but you can see across the board it's a disadvantage for this Cincinnati offense. But there is definitely a difference when Joe Burrow gets involved. So you could see this game going off as well. If I'm looking at these like 3 games, I think the most likely to hit the over is this Cowboys and Chiefs game, followed by this Ravens and Bengals game, and then it would be the Packers and Lions game. So I'm going to build the most game stacks here, followed by the Ravens and Bengals, and then the Packers and Lions. So let's look at Cincinnati first. Burrow at 6K. Chase Brown, definitely solid at 6,500. Is P. Ryan back? Okay, so P. Ryan will be back this week. So that does take some of Brown's value down. He's been get a lot of fantasy points through the air since P. Ryan's been out. But I think he'll definitely still be very involved. So we'll want to mix him in. Like my go-to stack, if I'm going to play Burrow, would be Burrow, Chase Brown, and Jamar Chase across the board there. So that's what we would pursue there. I actually like Tinsley more than I like Yosevas. I think Burrow kind of likes Tinsley just based on how I spoke about him in the preseason. And Yosevas, we just haven't really seen much when these opportunities have presented themselves in the past. So I definitely lean more Tinsley. We'll definitely mix in Yosevas with our Burrow stacks, but Tinsley is one of my go-to punt plays, even without Burrow involved. And then we got Gesicki back this week. I like him a lot as well. The Chase Gesicki stack is very interesting as well. And then on Baltimore side, at tight ends, I like both Andrews and Likely. Likely's been on the field about the same amount as Andrews, but he just hasn't done anything with the targets yet. But he is capable. We've seen big games from him in the past. We just haven't seen them this year. So I will be building with Likely in lineups as well. It's going to happen sometime, and this feels like a great spot for it to happen. Cincinnati is awful against the tight end. They give up tight end 1 and running back 1 numbers pretty much week in and week out. So my favorite stack out of this game is Derrick Henry plus either Andrews or Likely, just because I want to attack running backs and tight ends against the Bengals, and in this case, it makes sense to do both with the pricing. At wide receiver, I like Zay a lot. I think he's a really good floor. I think you can pretty confidently expect him to get 15 points with 25-point upside. So I like him a lot this week. He'll be one of my core plays. And then if Bateman plays, I like him a lot too at 3,800. If he doesn't play, I like Hopkins a lot. And Wallace would be a deep throw. Both Wallace and Walker getting about the same amount of routes. Yeah, if Bateman's out there and play a little bit, if Bateman's in, I would definitely play Bateman and then mix in a little Hopkins, but nobody else beyond that. All right, let's build a lineup real quick. Let's do a game stack in this Bengals and Baltimore game. We're going to do it through Burrow. We'll have Henry, and we'll go Likely. And obviously we go Chase. We get Flowers in here. You can go Gesicki there. Okay, so I'm saying Burrow's throwing for 4 touchdowns. It's going to go 2 of them go to Chase. 1 goes to Gesicki. And actually, let's get real crazy. We're going to go Tinsley for the 4th. Then the Ravens score 4 touchdowns as well. Henry gets 2 of them. Flowers gets 1. And Likely gets 1. So that's how this comes to fruition to make sense here. And then that's going to obviously allow us to get to Gibbs. Whoops. So I want to do that. Leaves us 4,600 for defense. Let's go. Yeah, I guess we'll go Lions there. So big game stack. We're leaving a lot remaining, but I actually like doing that in a 3-game slate because it gives us a lineup that is likely not going to be duplicated. But we're playing it as if the big game of the day is the Cincinnati and Ravens game. We're trying to get every single touchdown out of that game, and we think that there's going to be 8 touchdowns there, roughly 800 yards of offense. So we're gobbling up a lot if that game goes off there. We've got some contrarian plays in Tinsley and Gesicki that could be real nice if they hit, as well as Likely. And then we got some studs jammed in there as well with Henry, Gibbs, and Chase. So, yeah, it's a fun lineup. Obviously, not extremely likely to hit, but definitely a scenario that could hit and give us leverage on the field. All right, my friends, have fun. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Got some big announcements coming up soon as well. I'm working on a website and some cool tools and options for y'all. So excited to roll that out. But I will get a wait list going here in the next couple of weeks. But stay tuned, my friends. Big things are coming. All right, good luck in Week 13 on this Thanksgiving Day slate. We'll see you on Saturday for the main slate breakdown. Good luck, my friends. We'll see you on Saturday.